This screencast is continued from the Xiki web development screencast. As you create trees, you can add notes to help yourself remember what's going on. Enter bullet always enters a bullet underneath the current one. I'll say make larger to remind myself that I want to do that later. And I'll go down here and I'll say borrow. That's a common thing to do to indicate that you want to borrow from this to use up here. There are also ways to make trees from the spot you happen to be in a file. Let's say I'm here, I can do an as line, layout files, and then I'll do an enter quote to paste a tree that just has that line. A couple other ways of navigating are open edited. That'll show you all the files you've edited recently. I can type HTML to narrow down and see all the HTMLs. Also, you can do a do tree PM for my bookmark to my app, and that will expand the whole tree and I can narrow down. I'll type HTML here, and that will show all the HTMLs in my project. You can have wiki syntaxes for running code within the context of your app. Here is a line of code that calls a model method. If I control enter, it will run that using a behind the scenes MERB console or Rails console. You can do the same thing on a remote server if you have your SSH certificates set up correctly. This is calling a model method remotely. If I do a control enter, it shows you the result. You can create simple Xiki plugins for your app to do common tasks and to make your app easier for new people to get up and running with. You can see all Xiki plugins by doing a control enter on a blank line. I'm going to start typing Proto to narrow down to the plugin for this app, and I'll do a tab to show the options. You can also define keyboard shortcuts to speed things up a little bit. I've got a enter menu protonite shortcut that starts an incremental search so I can narrow down if I want. Notice there's an option to start the server. There are a couple logs that you can take a look at. This shows you a couple frequently used pages, and this starts a console. See the screencast on extending Xiki for how to create a plugin. I'll give you a really quick demo here. Xiki plugins are just Ruby classes, and the menus are just methods. So let's say I've got a project called Foo Pity, and I want to make a plugin for it. I'll make a class and a method that is a class method called menu, and that will just return an option. Now I'll do Ruby to evaluate it, and then if I go down here and control enter on a blank line, there it is, and there's the option. The next steps would be to implement this method to do something real here. And if you want to have more options and more menus, you can just add more to your menu. You can browse and edit your databases by doing enter list databases and narrowing down to the one you want. I'll tab in and just take a look at the documents. You can go in to the record and edit it and do a control enter to save. There are MySQL and Postgres Xiki plugins somewhere. I think they need some updating, but these things are very simple to implement. If you can write a Ruby method that will go get a list of your databases and another Ruby method that will display the contents of a record, that's for the most part all a Xiki plugin is. In the highlights, you saw how to run a unit test. I'll do a layout 1, open bookmark to do, and type the wiki syntax for running a unit test. This is the spec. And if I do a control enter, it will run it and show you the results. I'll do a enter menu protonite and go to the data source log. And then I'll do a do upper to run the spec again. It's do upper because it jumps up one level in the tree and then runs it again. You can use these logs to see what's going on in your code. I'll go up here and do a layout create to create a new view, and I'll jump to the controller here. And if I want to see what the value of that is, I can do a do upper, and it will run the spec again and show the output. So you can use that to see values of variables, etc., and keep rerunning the specs. You can use this specs wiki syntax to just jump to a spec by doing a universal control enter. Layout all will hide the other view, and if I do a 9 do as test, it will run and show you the results in place, just as an alternate quick way of running a spec. If you're on a spec and you want to quickly add the wiki syntax to your to-do view, you just do a as line and go up here and do it enter as test. As you can see here, you can have multiple spec lines right next to each other, and you can go back and forth between running one spec and then the other spec while you're developing. These are the same, of course, but they can easily be different. Let's say you have a Python script you want to run and test out. hello.py. And it just prints out a couple things. Hey, hi. You can make a wiki syntax to run it. Python file name, and do a control enter. Then you can come over here and change the script and do a do upper, and then make some more edits and keep doing a do upper. You can run a lot of things that way, scripts, etc. And as an even faster shortcut, you can do a 9 as file that will save and do a do upper for you. There's a general purpose log called the output log that you can easily plug into multiple applications, and you can call it from Xiki plugins. It is a flat structure. All the output goes to one place. I'll do a search files to search in the files and jump back to the controller. I don't need this line anymore. Let me replace it with the enter log line and save. Then I'll go down here and open the log, and I'll make a wiki syntax to launch the page again. Then if I do a do enter, you can see the output down here, and you can of course control enter to navigate to it. So if you have several different log lines going on, you can use those to navigate to the various places of interest in your app. The output log is usually temporary. You'll usually remove your log statements before you commit, whereas the other types of logs that we saw earlier are usually longer term, and you'll leave those in your data source or whatever checked in. The shortcut to commit to your repository is enter push, and then the shortcut to your directory that you want to commit. Layout all will hide the other views. You can control enter to review the diffs. Let's say you have a couple things that you don't want to commit until later. Just move them down and have a separate commit for them with a different message. There are also menu items that will let you search in the log and just take a look at the log itself. And you can expand to take a look at the diffs of each file in the previous commits. Go to memorize.com/Xiki for an easy way to memorize what we covered in this screencast.